How's it going? Just before we get into the episode, I want to let you know that we now have a Patreon. I'm pretty sure you know what a Patreon is. It's where you supporting this podcast. If you want to help us, cover the cost of the studio, all those kind of things, and maybe get a bit of extra content for yourself. If you join at the lowest tier, you will get 48 hours early access to all the studio episodes. And we got some big guests coming on, so it's going to be worth doing that. And if you hit the higher tiers, maybe you get a little bit of extra stuff. We got some custom content that's going to be exclusive to the Patreon that you can't see anywhere else. And at the highest tier, maybe I'll do a little custom content specifically for you. Yep, that's all available. It's patreon.com/Kinell Sinister Cinema. The link's in the comments. If you are interested, check that out. Anyway, on with the show.
Yes, people, what's good? I'm Kinell, and this is Sinister Cinema, where we get deep into the guts of the stranger side of cinema. Kinell Sinister Cinema is brought to you by Forgotten Sons Apparel. Check them out at forgottensonsapparel.co.uk. Forgotten Sons Apparel is a York-based streetwear brand drawing inspiration from alternative culture, tattoos, film, classic TV and cartoons from our childhood. In our own words, if you like our stuff half as much as we do, then we like it twice as much as you. I'm a big fan of this brand and I love the guys who make it. They've supported me for years, way before I was podcasting. They supported me in my battle rap career. You might have seen me rocking some of their garms on Don't Flop and other leagues. I love Forgotten Sons Apparel and I'm urging you all to check them out at forgottensonsapparel.co.uk. Right, now on with the show.
Yeah, once again, back on the KSC, and Parsley's here with me once again.
Hello, boss. How you doing?
Not so bad at all, lad. Not so bad.
Good
Fully
stuff.
buzzing.
Good stuff.
Had to get you back in, as always. We're kind of completing a trilogy here, really, aren't we?
Yes. Yeah, I guess we are a kind of decades thing.
Yeah.
It's worked out as, hasn't it?
Yeah, how I figured we'd approach it. Hang on, that's blowing my head off in the earphones. How I figured we'd approach it is like we've done the 70s, we've done the 80s, so I figured, naturally, we do the 90s.
Okay, then.
Yeah, I figured like the way this would go is we kind of like pull everything together, because in the 70s, we've still got exploitation films, and the exploitation films of the 70s are kind of like, now the people who grew up on that are now making the films
Absolutely.
In the 90s.
Yeah, and,
So,
making their comebacks and looking back at, the influences on their own careers from the films they saw as kids.
This is it, and we've got like all these original stars coming back, because people who weren't necessarily so appreciated in their own time are kind of like gaining the appreciation they deserve, decades on.
I can think of one in particular who we'll be talking about today.
Yeah, well, certainly.
I'll have to control myself.
Yeah. We're going to be going for 90s exploitation films. Now, just to clarify things for the viewers or the listeners, since more of you seem to be listening than watching.
Well, when you put my face on these things, what do you expect?
I'm asking for trouble, really, when you look at it like that. But obviously in the 90s, we've got a lot of big films. I tend to skew horror, as we know when we do on these things. And at this point, we get a lot of, higher end stuff and big cinematic successes and this kind of thing. I'm avoiding those altogether. I'm staying strictly on the grimy stuff, strictly low-budget exploitation B-movies. Because you already know what the big films from the 90s are like. You grew up with them, all of yous. So I'm going with the deep cut weirdness.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's often more fun than movies put together by a committee in Hollywood, isn't it?
Aye, that's a fact. Do you want to start off, or shall I?
You can start off this time round.
Okay. Cool. One I'd like to bring up is one that's recently been rediscovered, and this is a film called Tammy and the T-Rex.
That rings a little bell in my head. Tell me about it.
I might have mentioned this before. The background to this film is essentially like some guy who made films, was a movie producer, had a mate who was responsible for moving large bits of fairground equipment around the country.
Okay.
Like what happens is they make these like ace attractions and stuff for like Disneyland, Universal Studios, these places in California and all this, and like eventually they bring in new ones. And what happens is when they bring in new ones, they have to get rid of the old ones, so they go to other fairgrounds and theme parks and that. So they get shipped around the country. So that's what this guy did, and this guy. He spoke to the guy who makes the films and says to him, look, I will have access to a full-size T-Rex, formerly... I'll have access to that that's been in Disney World or whatever for 3 weeks, and then it's going off to a theme park in Texas. So you can make whatever film you want, but involving this T-Rex.
Okay.
And it's got to be beginning to end, boxed off in 3 weeks.
Right.
Now, that's a pretty tall order. So this guy is like, he doesn't want to be doing a lot of location stuff. So, like, everything, the whole film was shot in, like, locations that are within a mile of his own house. Like, there wasn't a lot of moving around.
Okay.
And he basically wrote a teen romantic, not romantic comedy, like a teen high school comedy.
Okay.
Involving a T-Rex. You with me so far?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I'm just going to pull up some deets on it. So that was basically the idea.
Was this T-Rex model, could it like move about, or was it just like a Happy Shopper slide?
Oh, yeah, it can move about like it's but very robotically because it's part of a theme park. So,
okay, got you.
So they basically had to make the film about...
I mean, already it sounds better than what I'm hearing about the new Jurassic Park film.
Oh yeah, this is awesome. Like, so yeah, it was directed by Stuart Raphael and features the feature film debuts of both Denise Richards and Paul Walker.
Okay, that's two pretty big names.
Yeah. They were both like dancers at the time that were trying to like get some acting credit, so they were trying to get into it. So they got involved in this film, and the plot of this film is that she's a girl in high school. Her boyfriend's Paul Walker. Her ex-boyfriend doesn't like this, so him and his mates, for some reason, manage to kidnap him and drop him off in a lion enclosure, which seems remarkably easy to get into. Okay. And he is eaten by lions.
Oh no!
Eaten by lions almost entirely. So he's taken to hospital, and in comes what appears to be what's heavily coded as a former Nazi doctor.
Right.
Who comes in and says, "Oh yeah, I need this body for my experiments, and like we're gonna do all this stuff, and we can bring it back to life." But really, they're just kidnapping the brain to stick into a robot T-Rex.
Wow.
Hijinks ensue.
Well, yeah, I can imagine, with hilarious consequences, as they usually say.
Yeah, so they managed to box this film off in 3 weeks. But obviously, you know, when you're doing things this quickly, not everyone's communicating with each other well, and certain things go a bit sideways. In this case, they hired an excellent guy to do all the other special effects, John Carl Buechler. Okay. He's directed a few banging films. He's also like done special effects for like some of the later Friday the 13th films when they were really coming into their own with the kills. Things like I'm sure he's involved in Nightmare on Elm Street. Lots of really good horror stuff.
Okay.
So this teen high school comedy, he ends up making the bits involving blood very, very horrendously violent. It becomes this incredibly gory film despite being a teen comedy. And, you know, when they eventually show it to the producer who's got to put this out, he just sort of looks at this teen comedy with Denise Richards and Paul Walker and goes, why have you done this? There's a really lengthy autopsy scene in it, like an autopsy of Paul Walker, no less, and a comedy autopsy of Paul Walker. So obviously they're thinking, who's this for? So like it was heavily edited down so they could release it to a teen audience.
Okay.
So they got rid of most of the violence. That was until a few years ago. I think it was 2018. Vinegar Syndrome, the label, who that they re-released loads of stuff, like they recently remastered and re-released all the Rudy Ray Moore films.
Okay.
And all this kind of
yeah.
stuff. So when you go on Prime and you see a really nice restoration of like Dolomite or whatever, that's them. They got hold of the original print with all the gore in.
Oh, brilliant.
And they restored it, And it did a brief tour of film festivals, and it's now available on Blu-ray, and you can buy it. And this is an absolutely incredible piece of work.
Do you own a copy of this then now?
I do.
Good man.
I do own a copy.
You see, you back it up, don't you?
Yeah.
You back it up with the actions. So basically, he's got the guy, the jealous boyfriend's brain is in the T-Rex.
Yeah.
And the T-Rex is after Paul Walker.
No. The jealous boyfriend kills Paul Walker by feeding him to a group of lions.
Oh, yes, yeah. Sorry.
So
I'm going to have to watch this tonight.
Yeah. So now, obviously, Denise Richards is, in love with a T-Rex. You know?
Okay. That's fair enough.
So she's trying to see if she can she's trying to see if she can make things better. Spoiler warning, she can't, and she's on the run with a T-Rex.
I mean, she's been in worse things since she got famous.
She has.
Let's be honest, you know. But that sounds like quite the hour and a half to spend then.
It's incredible, like, you know, because this is the time when, like, teen comedies, it was things like your Cluelesses, things like that. This is from 93, which I think is, like, might be the same year or the year after Clueless. These are the kind of films that are, like, popular with teens. And, like, this is, like, very much of that. And a lot of people I know that grew into love those old teen comedies, you know, the quirky from the 90s.
No, absolutely. Yeah, of course.
There's a lot of people that grew up with them. But this is one of them. But giant robot dinosaur, lots of gore.
You can't get much more exploitation than that, really, can you?
Yeah, flipping like that. That's the principle of exploitation. Okay, we've got this 3-week window in which we have access to a robot Tyrannosaurus. What are we going to do with it? And they turned it around and they made a banger.
Yeah, and obviously you live around the corner from a lion enclosure, which was convenient.
Yeah. I do have some. That's one thing that never really gets explained is like exactly how they organised that one, because like you know the real lions in it. I'm sure they must have used like some stock footage and everything, but
I suppose if the guy that transports the T-Rex around knows a bunch of carnies, it can probably get access to a lion enclosure.
Indeed.
Goodness me.
Yeah.
Right, I'm getting that one in myself to watch this weekend.
Tammy and the T-Rex. Yeah.
Fantastic stuff.
Make sure you try and like get the right copy, like, and
I'll look for 2018 in brackets when I get hold of it.
You'll be truly impressed. Like I mean, as I say, like obviously, like since the passing of Paul Walker autopsy scenes played for laughs.
Yeah,
that's a wild concept.
Yeah, don't be showing it to any petrol heads. You might upset them.
Indeed. It's all about family. Shout out Most Prob, looking to get him on here soon. But yes, anyway, so on that note, do we want to move on to your first one?
Yeah, I've got a Larry Cohen movie.
Oh, excellent.
So before we even get into that, you know loads about Larry Cohen, don't you? He's a real exploitation genius.
Oh yeah.
Over the years,
he was the king of guerrilla filmmaking. And I think one of my one of my selections might be written by him. I think it is. I'll come to it later, but yes, Well, I do have a film written by Larry Cohen.
Fantastic. Well, this one is the one I've got is Original Gangsters, and I'm saying it like it's spelt. So this is mid-90s.
Yeah.
By which point they weren't making blaxploitation movies, really.
Yeah.
Which is when I got the text off the other day that said 90s, I was like, oh god, let's see what we can find.
Yeah. See, this is an interesting point historically, because at this point they're not really making them, but they are kind of like sort of permeating popular culture.
Oh, absolutely.
Because like around this time, around like 93, 94, we get artists like Snoop coming through, Snoop Doggy Dogg as he was at the time,
of course,
and we got Dre's coming through, and we get things, and these are people who grew up on these original 70s films. Absolutely,
yeah, and G-Funk looked back to things like Parliament and Funkadelic and the early 70s funk that was around then.
Very much so. So you got the musical influence, but it'd go further than that, because like they would get Rudy Ray Moore on their and things to feature. That was when these people who grew up as rappers, who grew up idolizing Rudy Ray Moore, Like we were actually getting him on the record. So, like, whilst they weren't getting mainstream recognition, the original 70s blaxploitation people, like, the influence is coming through.
Absolutely. And, you know, kids were growing up in that era with it all around them. They were watching it on TV late at night, and they would have known people like Fred Williamson, and Jim Brown, and Pam Grier, who the three headliners in this movie, Original Gangsters.
Incredible lineup.
It is, and it's not just them three as well. I mean, there are so many faces that you recognise when you sit and watch it, and it was a real sort of cast reunion, I guess, for that era. Simple old story, based in Gary, Indiana, where of course the Jackson 5 came from.
Yep.
But it's a very deprived area at this point. You've got two gangs who are running the streets, one of which are called the Rebels.
Yep.
And the Rebels kill a shop owner's son for grifting them at basketball. And so the turf wars begin.
This is it, like turf wars, like we're back in that territory. Like.
Absolutely, yeah. And you've got Fred Williamson, who grew up in Gary, Indiana. He's gone off to be an NFL coach, so he comes back to the town in his private jet to try and mediate things. You've got a dodgy white mayor and a dodgy white police chief who are taking the dollar. Every ingredient you might have had in a blaxploitation movie of the 70s.
Yeah.
Just basically with more rapping.
Yeah.
And more upgraded weapons.
Yeah.
When you get to the end.
And the rapping, like the what's it called, the sort of mid-90s sound. It's sample based. It's using the music.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of it sampling like actual blaxploitation soundtracks. Like,
of course it is. Yeah, and the other film that I'll be talking about today steals a blaxploitation soundtrack wholesale.
Oh yes,
all the way through. But I mean, these guys weren't getting other acting jobs at this point.
Yeah. And
although this is a major studio movie, it's made by MGM, who did a lot of the blaxploitation stuff when it took off commercially. Guys like Fred Williamson and Jim Brown just weren't picking up the roles at that point. Yeah. So it was a kind of let's do the show right here sort of thing almost.
Yeah.
Pam Grier really wasn't getting work then. This was before really she came back into the mainstream.
Yeah.
As much as anything, but it's cheaply made, but it's pretty well done. It's pretty well done. Everybody gets their just desserts in the end, obviously.
Yeah.
But the sight of them walking down the street with their semi-automatic machine guns, taking out the bad gangsters, that's well worth sitting through to see that.
Yeah, it was like I do have memories of this coming around, and it was suddenly like, we're getting a new movie with these people in, like. And I didn't really appreciate people behind the scenes so much at that time because I was only a teenager and all that. But it's good that Larry Cohen's the man behind it. Like,
yeah, I think he only made 2 movies in the 90s, and that was one of the 2 of them. He was concentrating more on the writing at that point.
Yeah. Because he was an incredible storyteller. Like he was so good as a guerrilla filmmaker. He was really active in that era of New York when it was really easy to get a permit to like shoot on the street. So there's a lot of New York street vibes. He was that guy. He could like turn things around like that. You know, he even did things like Q the Winged Serpent, like which is
brilliant.
Yeah, and it's popped up on my Prime recommendation, so it's just been added. Q the Winged Serpent.
It's got Carradine in it, hasn't it, from Kung Fu?
Yeah,
Q the Winged Serpent. I saw it as a teenager on late night ITV.
Yeah.
Because it had boobs in it, so I was sitting up to watch it. But it's a bizarre film, that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's the 70s, like, but no, it might be the 80s, in fact. But Q the Winged Serpent. We're diverting here, but you know it's worth doing these diversions and talking about these things, especially since you can just, if you've got Prime, you can just watch it.
Absolutely. Now. So we've got 3 recommendations in already. Then, so we've got Tammy and the T-Rex.
Yeah.
Got Original Gangsters. Yeah. And what's the face?
Q the Winged Serpent.
Thank you. That we literally just mentioned.
Yeah, this is how much of a guerrilla filmmaker Larry Cohen was. Like the Winged Serpent is like an actual dragon that's fucking terrorizing New York City. But he's like very much a get out on the street and film things. So we contacted the company that were doing like the stop motion animation. He goes, oh yeah, I need this shot, I need a dragon doing this and all this. And they're like, okay. Well, we'll start working on that. And like, then we'll show you where you can put the camera and go like, he goes, no. I've filmed the footage. I've filmed the footage already. I've already done that. You put a dragon in it, like.
My favourite bits of that film are the fake beak.
Yeah.
When you just see the fake beak come in at the corner of the screen to nip somebody.
Yeah.
Love it.
Absolutely marvellous. But yes, salute to King Cohen. This is very much a pro Larry Cohen podcast.
Oh, yes. I think Original Gangsters might be around on Amazon.
Yeah.
But if you do pay for your movies, if you've got a Google account or whatever, I think it's only a couple of quid if you don't have Amazon. So, yeah, it's a good hour and a half's watch, that.
Yeah. Fantastic stuff. Okay. We'll move on. It wouldn't be me unless I dropped a little bit of something Italian here for you. And this would be The Cemetery Man, Dell'amore della morte.
Okay.
By Michele Soavi.
Right.
Or however you pronounce it.
I've not heard of any of this then.
Yeah. This is quite an interesting film. Features British actor Rupert Everett.
Okay, yeah, I know him.
Yeah, because as I say, like I mention this every time, but it always comes into play with my recommendations. The Italians, they just use people from all different countries because they dubbed all their audio in later.
Yes.
So they let people just go and act in their own languages and then sort it out in the mix. Like this one's a bit better done, like, because we're coming out. This is like 1994, I think this is.
Okay.
And Michele Soavi's like made a bit of a name for himself. Do you remember the Demons films?
Yes.
Yeah. There was a long history of films that were supposed to be sequels. I think there was 3 different films released as Demons 3.
Okay.
One of them was the debut of Michele Soavi, who actually plays the guy with the metal demon mask in the first Demons film.
Right.
And so his involvement with that was that he was sort of being raised around the movies to sort of like be the next director. So he made The Church, which was going to be Demons 3, but they said, no, this is a bit too good to be another Demons movie, so we're going to do that. And then he made another film called The Sect. He made the sort of slasher giallo Stage Fright. And then eventually we get to the Dell'amore della morte, which is released as Cemetery Man. And this is based on a Italian comic called Dylan Dog. And
okay.
It concerns a guy played by Rupert Everett who lives in a cemetery with his oafish assistant.
As you do.
Yeah, it's kind of like a horror comedy. This and the setup is that basically people come back to life and become zombies after they passed, but it's pretty much only this one guy who knows about it. And there's only a few people that know about it, so they just have to have a guy that just stays on site in the cemetery to shoot them when they come back.
Right. Okay.
So it's never really the rest of the world's completely oblivious to the existence of zombies because it's just one caretaker who works in a cemetery,
Making sure they don't get out of the cemetery.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the basic setup, but there's about 3 different plots in this thing. It goes in a lot of different directions. There appears to be plots of him becoming obsessed with this woman and later obsessed with another woman, but the other woman's played by the same actress as the first woman. And it's quite episodic in nature, but it sort of moves between acts in a really surrealistic thing. There's another thing with his oafish assistant falling in love with the mayor's daughter who becomes decapitated, and he falls in love with her head, who's going round and hanging round, and then the mayor finds out that that his daughter's head's still alive, but she doesn't want to come back to him. She wants to stay with this guy, and it's very difficult to explain, but it's quite fantastic. It's almost like the good levels of Monty Python humor-wise.
Right. Okay.
But also featuring some quite dramatic emotional beats, and it is shot beautifully. Some incredible stuff in it. It doesn't really have the shonky special effects we're familiar with. A lot of the more run and gun Italian knockoff productions. Mm-hmm. There's real art to it. I don't think I've seen a film with that much art to the shot composition and the cinematography. That has made me laugh as much as this, and has featured as many zombies. Those are 3 things I really love in a film, but I rarely see them in the same film.
So that makes it a good one then. So basically, you've got him falling in love with two different women, played by the same actress.
Yeah.
You've got an oafish assistant. Most assistants are oafish, aren't they? I've found. He falls in love with a decapitated head.
Yeah.
That we don't know how she gets around, but she's still alive.
We see her getting around. She seems to just hob.
Like scuttle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why I was thinking they might have glued her to a skateboard or something, but that's fair. I mean, that to me, that sounds like a good evening in.
It is a very good evening in. That's another one that's available on Prime. So
okay.
Yeah,
so Delamore, did you say it was called?
Yeah. Also known as The Cemetery Man.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to be looking up a lot of stuff this week.
Yeah. This is a good one. I reckon you'll really enjoy that. Like, this is one of the films, like, you know, when someone... It's one of the first films I tend to show people when, like I say, like, I'm into weird films. And they say, okay, show me something. I don't want to show them, like, Cannibal Holocaust or something.
No.
I just want to, I'll show this to people knowing that it's really, really weird and outlandish.
But made with love and humour, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, but everyone enjoys it. Like, it's probably like a good sort of gateway into Italian films and all, like.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a gateway drug for a lot of things. Like, you know, it's almost like a, you know, if someone like Shaun of the Dead, if they like Monty Python, and if there's a lot of categories that it can fall into, that people will appreciate this. So yeah, Delamorte, The Cemetery Man, available on Prime now, also on Blu-ray from Shameless Films.
Excellent stuff. I've only got two with me this week because such was the poor level of as you know, blaxploitation is my thing. And it's not even a blaxploitation film. Even its writer and director will insist that it's not a blaxploitation film. But you'd have to agree with me in every way other than that. It is.
Go on,
Jackie Brown.
So I'm like, okay. So tell me about your relationship with the film Jackie Brown. I've also got quite a close relationship with this one.
Well, Jackie Brown was the film that actually turned me on to blaxploitation movies. I mean, they were in my cultural memory, I suppose you could say, from when I was younger and having seen a few here and there. And of course, everybody knows about Shaft and that kind of thing. But I was very much a Tarantino fan. Love Reservoir Dogs. Love Pulp Fiction. So of course you want to see the next film in the list. And it turns out that Pam Grier's in it. Now I had memories of Pam Grier. I remember going to the cinema, paying my ticket, going in and just being completely spellbound for the entire 2 hours, whatever running time it was. You know?
Incredible stuff. Like, I mean, like, because very much like I was a teenage film nerd at this time, and obviously like teenage film bro like myself, we're all about Tarantino, and I was that guy who was like rediscovering old films, like, and I was rediscovering like the Hong Kong films like Chow Yun-Fat and City on Fire that influenced Reservoir Dogs, and the many films that influenced Pulp Fiction.
Oh yeah.
And we'd had a big gap between Pulp Fiction and Jackie Brown. And so we're all very excited about his new project. I was like following a lot of things. I believe it's based on a novel by Elmore Leonard.
That's right. Yeah, that's kind of all I knew about it when I went into the cinema.
Yeah, I think it's based on a novel called Rum Punch. Although actually they change it into a screwdriver in the film. Like, it's not even a rum punch that the guy drinks. And
in the book, the heroine is a white woman.
Yeah.
So, you know, they changed all that around, and I know Elmore Leonard was all over it. He loved the idea, you know, and he loved what they put together in the screenplay before they even got going with the shooting. Yeah.
It's an incredible piece of work altogether. Like one of the things that really hyped me up for it is, like, I believe he'd bought, Tarantino had bought the rights to like 4 different Elmore Leonard books, and I'd read the other 3, and Rum Punch was the one that I hadn't written. So this was the only way I could have gone in totally blind to this film, like. But at this point, like, I've like, you know, like, I've done my little research in Tarantino's, and I've started discovering things, like I've started discovering coffee and this kind of thing.
Of course. Well, you remember earlier on in the pod I was saying we'd got a director who'd taken the soundtrack wholesale from a blaxploitation movie to use in Jackie Brown, and that was Coffee.
Yeah.
So all of the orchestral stuff and the background music was originally in Coffee, the Walter Hill movie from the 70s with Pam Grier.
And of course, we've got the excellent use of I think is it the opening? It's the theme from Across 110th Street.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's one of the most amazing opening scenes in a movie ever. That one. And to say before we get into that, it's a complete rip off of the opening of The Graduate.
Yeah.
Where Dustin Hoffman is on the walkway walking past the white tiles at the airport.
Yeah.
Here we've got a middle-aged woman with a lot of dignity, just on the moving walkway, passing the tiles as Across 110th Street plays.
Yeah.
I mean, it sets it up beautifully for me.
Incredible, we knew what we were in. See, the thing is, everyone was expecting very much. The thing is, he wanted to do something that involved that was like a crime-related film, but everyone was thinking it was going to be like a bunch of sweary white guys, like Reservoir Dogs, or like the old style of Pulp Fiction.
Yes.
Both those everyone was expecting something similar to those two films, even though those two films were so different to each other, and that was our only frame of reference. Although I suppose he had written True Romance and Natural Born Killers, which had also come out.
But still, again, I mean, True Romance and Natural Born Killers, yes, are probably quite close in nature together. But those two don't really relate to Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs so much, do they?
No, not at all. I mean, it's interesting because the thing is, there was so much expectation on Jackie Brown because this was Tarantino's first film as a superstar director.
Yeah,
flipping Pulp Fiction is the film where people will tell you he was big. The Reservoir Dogs was huge. Don't get me wrong, but at this time he was still like an indie darling.
Definitely.
When Pulp Fiction drops, that he obtains ubiquity, probably more so than he even wanted to.
Absolutely. I mean, the Pulp Fiction was such a massive success at the time, and of course, plenty of big names in there, and big names from the past as well that he was bringing back. One of the things that fascinates me about Jackie Brown was some of the casting in there.
Yeah,
that Stallone apparently had gone up for the role that Robert De Niro played. For instance, and they'd had a few guys in there. Casting Michael Keaton, for instance, as Ray Nicolette, the cop, the FBI guy, who appears as the same character in George Clooney's Out of Sight film.
Yeah, that's true.
Which again is from an Elmore Leonard book.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a little build of that universe. And Keaton actually said at the time he wouldn't do Jackie Brown if he couldn't do Out of Sight as well.
Yeah.
And keep that character to belong to him. Really, I mean, with again, you've got Tarantino, like you say, you've got the Hong Kong influence, you've got the French influence in Pulp Fiction. This, you've got the blaxploitation influence. Remarkably for me, there's no more than two main black characters in the whole thing, is there?
Samuel L. Jackson,
Samuel L. Jackson and Pam Grier.
Yeah, there's some incredible casting going on in this, some fascinating things. We've got a really big role for Robert Forster, who's an incredible character actor, but he's never really been a star like that.
And he plays a cop in Original Gangsters as well, does Forster.
Yeah, he was the kind of character actor that would be around those kind of films.
Absolutely.
Just always putting in solid work, but he's never really had a big role. Whereas Robert De Niro is in this and gets kind of a fucking comedy side character.
It's one of the first comedy De Niro roles, I think, really, where the comedy's incidental. Obviously, he's just a klutz.
Yeah.
He's a what do you call him? An oafish assistant, really.
Yeah. He's someone who's been in prison too long, and he can't really adjust to the outside world.
But he has got Bridget Fonda in a pair of short shorts.
Indeed.
So it's not all bad.
Yeah, but that's such a flex. Giving Robert De Niro a small part. Not a walk on little stunt casting cameo. Giving him a bit of a part. No. We're going to give the big part to Robert Forster.
It's true though, and that was quite a fashionable thing in Hollywood at the time. I mean, Tim Burton, when he made Mars Attacks, was getting all these big celebrity names and killing them off in minutes.
Yeah, but that was just almost a celebrity cameo.
Yes. Whereas, I mean, for De Niro, this was pretty much a cameo role for him. I know he took it on a lot in the second half of the movie, but he wasn't the top line star on that at all, was he?
Yeah, like he was playing the like you'd think he'd get the role that Robert Forster's working.
Absolutely.
Because you know, like we flipping like De Niro's doing incredible things here. He hasn't really transitioned to comedy yet. Like right now, he's coming off the back of like a Heat. With Al Pacino and these kind of things, like he's still like that force to be reckoned with. And I mean, Goodfellas is 90s, like 90s De Niro is flipping laying it down, but I think he's just starting to do the occasional family movie and all that.
I think so, yeah. I think it was Rocky and Bullwinkle around about that time. Not that he'll fess up to it at this point.
Yeah, it was a bit before, and there's a, I don't know if it's a conspiracy theory or like, but I've heard this theory a lot, and I'd like to think it was utterly intentional, is that's what the final scene between Sam Jackson and him is about. It's the bit when he, he realizes when Samuel L. Jackson's character, who's the main character, who rocking that, I had a Kangol hat around this time, don't judge me. We all did, man.
I had a Kangol coat. I couldn't get the hat. Head's too big.
But he's in the car and he shoots Robert De Niro and he's saying, "What's wrong with you, man? Your ass used to be beautiful. You used to be amazing. You used to be the guy."
Ah, so that's the speech they snuck in to say why you're doing Rocky and Bullwinkle, basically.
Yeah, that's it. Like that's it.
I didn't know that. That's excellent. And of course, the way he structures the whole thing as well. You know, and when you get to the heist, if you like, at the end. You know, it's all played out from different angles, which is a very Tarantino thing to do after Pulp Fiction, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But no, the great thing with Forster was it's such an understated role anyway.
Yeah.
He's not a flash guy, this character. And I think he just carries it off brilliantly.
Yeah, it's just absolutely perfect. It gives the movie a whole kind of different set of stakes because, you know, if the main bounty hunter character is played by the big star, there's always going to be this feeling that he either can't die or because he's too big to die, or it's going to be some big, huge thing when he does die.
A heroic death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, when you have this character who's, like, played by someone who's much less assuming, like, you can kill Robert Forster at any point in a movie.
Yeah, of course you can.
Yeah.
But no, I love the way he's quiet, he's understated, he gets on with it, he knows what he wants in the end, and you know he's able to come out of it at the other side, one of the few left unscarred, really. So, and of course, during the course of the film, he gets to discover the Delphonics. Oh
yes, incredible tune.
And so, for no other reason than
that blow your mind.
Like, oh man. Song. So, but as a whole thing from end to end, for me, it's my favourite Tarantino by about a mile.
Yeah, it became my favourite Tarantino as I got older. Like, you know, when I was younger, I always loved Jackie Brown, but like, you know, I loved like more the kind of like reference heavy stuff, like. But as I kind of grew up, I thought, no, this is a more concise story. This is better character work. This is like a more solidly made film. But also at the same time, the reference game's still there.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's a lot more subtle. For example, like at one point on the soundtrack, I believe he uses an example of the sort of like quite sort of funky disco-y soundtrack from from Vampiros Lesbos.
Okay.
Which is a lesbian vampire film by Jesus Franco, who made so many lesbian vampire films. It's called Vampiros Lesbos.
It could be vampires on holidays in Greece.
Yeah.
Somewhere, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Once Upon a Time in Los Angeles.
In Hollywood?
The last film that he did. I really enjoyed that. And I think that is probably the most closely connected of his films with Jackie Brown.
Yeah.
Obviously, he went off and did The Wild West and Inglourious Bastards as well, which is a cracker. But, there's something about Jackie Brown that always grabbed me. And the fact that it's not generally people's favourite, I think, has had me hold on to it a little bit tighter as mine.
It does, like, because I think, like, you know, a lot of his other films, they have the more iconic scenes, the more set pieces. But this is just end-to-end a solid, fantastic film.
Yeah.
There isn't a bad bit in it. There might not be the same, like, kind of, like, lines that you can quote to your friends. There might not be the same kind of ridiculous moments that step out of the plot, like the Jackrabbit Slims twist contest.
Of course. But then he's coming at this as an adaptation. It's his first adaptation rather than an original thing. So I think there's a respect for the source material in there as well.
Yeah.
That he doesn't do anything too lunatic with it.
Yeah, he changes some things, but it's just a solid piece of work. And it comes from the DNA of this film is very much the stuff we were talking about the very first podcast we did.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, bringing Pam Grier back after what at the time was about 20-25 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it put her into a whole new flush of her career.
Yeah.
And she was getting parts in TV series like The L Word.
Yeah.
I believe there was some Vampiros Lesbos in that show as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, it really brought her back to the forefront of you know, how many roles for middle-aged black women at that point in time?
There weren't any at all, really. Like it was Aunt Viv on The Fresh Prince, like.
Yeah, or something with Whoopi Goldberg.
This is it, like, and you know, like Whoopi Goldberg part, she'd just be there to appear and be Whoopi Goldberg.
Absolutely.
She'd done The Colour Purple a while back. After that, she was just appearing as a Whoopi Goldberg.
Jumping
character.
Jack Flash is the example I'm thinking of, where she basically plays Whoopi Goldberg in a suit for a bit. So yeah, that for me, that will live forever with me. That Jackie Brown, honestly, it will. It's of all the films we've talked about in my 3 visits to KSC, that for me towers above the others.
Yeah. Okay, man. Yeah. Respect for that. Okay. Well, I'm gonna chuck another one in to just completely drop the tone.
That's a surprise.
Yeah, and I'm going to drop in a film by, fucking hell, I've forgotten the guy who made it now. And it's one of my favourite directors and all. But
we're not getting any younger viewers.
Yeah, but I'm going to say Frankenhooker.
Okay.
Yeah, from 1990 by Frank Henenlotter.
Okay, so what's Frank Henenlotter famous for then, other than Frankenhooker?
Basket Case, are you familiar with
Basket
Case?
Yeah, absolutely.
Basket Case was his sort of debut. That again is like very much from the Grindhouse essence.
It was from the Video Nasty kind of era as well. That would be one that would get mentioned in the papers, isn't it? Basket Case.
Yeah. I don't think it ever got classified as a Video Nasty itself, but it kind of like ended up in that
group of movies, I think.
Yeah, it was around that time, and this was one that was like, interestingly enough, like Basket Case kind of like came through from video marketing. Like at the time it came out, that was a 1980 film, a VHS, very new at the time, and like every VHS cost like $100 or whatever.
Yes, yeah. I remember the cover art, the eye peeping out from inside the basket, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh goodness! So tell us about. I mean, by the sound of it, I kind of think I know what Frankenhooker might be, but
well. Yes, it involves a character whose wife, played by former Penthouse pet Patty Mullen, is the guy's an inventor.
Right.
He invents things. One of the things he's invented is a remote control, like a lawnmower, a line of it with a mind of its own. You see where I'm going with this?
Okay, yeah.
And his girlfriend, who's due to be married to, his fiancée, I should say, gets mown down by this lawnmower.
Oh, no.
He becomes very depressed. He's wondering, he's managed to save her head, though, and he's wondering how he can bring her back.
They're very important in these films, these heads, aren't they?
Yeah, you've got to say that's pretty much been a running theme with the films that I've been coming out with.
It is. That's your trope, is the severed head.
Yeah. So he's trying to think of like what could he do? How can I bring my wife's severed head back? And the clue's in the title with Frankenhooker, really, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, he is attempting to find the body parts of sex workers to build a new body for his wife.
Okay.
And he does this, like, he goes into 34th Street, like, you know, we're back when that part of Manhattan was still really, really sketchy.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
talking
yeah.
1990 around this time. Speaks to, like, this guy called Zorro, who's this huge guy, who's a pimp, who's got all these women working for him for crack. And he comes up with his own form of super crack that causes people to explode.
Wow.
He's trying to find the perfect body for his fiancée.
Okay.
He's checking out a load of them. He kind of decides he can't go through with it, but they find his super crack and they all smoke it and they all explode.
So he's accidentally got himself a room full of body parts then?
Yeah.
Ah.
A huge room full of sex workers' body parts.
Okay.
And he assembles a body for his wife, and he manages to resurrect her. But these body parts still have the souls of crack-addicted sex workers.
Now, I've seen movies where there's one with a hand, isn't there, from the 60s, where the possessed hand is going after everybody.
Yeah,
but this is basically, so what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different hookers with 6 different souls controlled by the mind of one ex-fiancé.
Not controlled by the mind at all for most of the film. So, yeah, it's a particularly chaotic film from the director of Basket Case and Brain Damage, lesser known, but probably better and equally as mental. I think this was shot back-to-back with Basket Case 2, and basically they had money for one film, so they made 2 films at the same time.
Good thinking.
Yeah, and it's one of the most chaotic comedies I've ever seen in my life.
It sounds it, to be fair. Does she have bolts in her neck, by the way? Are they going with that?
We got big stitches and that, and what we call it? Her hair's purple and that. And,
right.
She's got a big, and it's one of the greatest comedic performances of all time by Patty Mullen, who never did another comedic performance. She did one of a horror film called I think it was Doom Asylum or Doom Asylum.
Right.
Where she wasn't as good in that, and as the deranged Frankenhooker in this, she is truly incredible. It is one of the funniest performances I've ever seen in my life.
So does she go on? I mean, once she's fully reconstructed and electrified and reanimated and stuff. I mean, what kind of crazy japes is she getting up to?
Well, she's going out and she's trying to find Johns, but the only problem is she's electric, and anyone who attempts to fuck her, their head will explode.
Right. It's best to stick with the super crack then, isn't it?
You'd think, but yeah, hijinks ensue.
Wow.
Yeah, this is my favourite one of Frank Henlotter's films. He's like, I have his entire filmography, which isn't a big filmography, but he doesn't miss. Like, everything that he's done, I have on Blu-ray, and it's just all incredible work.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, he did this in Basket Case 3, and then he didn't do another film for ages. And eventually he did a film called Bad Biology with R.A. the Rugged Man.
Okay.
It was a rapper that I was a very big fan of, and this concerns a woman who has a medical condition that means, like, she has sex with people and then gives birth within the space of hours, so she just leaves babies wherever. And she meets a guy who has a giant, uncontrollable penis with a mind of its own, and he has to do a lot of drugs to get it to fucking behave itself.
Okay.
And he falls out with his dealers, and it's that level of chaotic. But that's another incredible film. That wasn't until a lot later. But this film, Frankenhooker, this is just genius, quite frankly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Again, it looks like I've got a triple bill tonight, me and the dog.
Yeah.
Sat at home with a few beers.
Yeah.
You've sold all 3 of these to me today, mate.
Incredible stuff, like, and like, there was a reason I wanted to pull these ones out, because I knew we'd be talking about these fantastic films like Jackie Brown and all that. And at the same time, during the 90s, we get like movies really like changed, and like it was possible for a lot of weird and really interesting things to like actually get a lot of mainstream attention in the 90s. You know, when it was that sort of post Pulp Fiction wave. And there was a lot of from things like Seven to The Usual Suspects to like really, really crazy out there stuff really started popping in cinemas in the 90s. But I just felt the need to like drop a little reminder in there that even when cinema and mainstream cinema is at its absolute craziest, most lunatic,
there are still people that can out lunatic that on a lower budget.
Yeah, there's still always going to be something cheaper and crazier out there.
I mean, I do feel very much, and I don't know if this is an age thing, my friend, but I do feel very much that the 90s was the last. Can you imagine them releasing The Usual Suspects today and having a hit with it?
Not with the same fucking cast.
Of course not. But you know what I'm saying? You know, serious, interesting dramas like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, if it hasn't got a dinosaur in it or someone from the Star War, you know, you're in trouble these days. So it's a fun decade to look at, really, in that sense.
Yeah. I'm not going to go that far and say but I will say I do have a problem with the way that Marvel movies and like DC movies kind of like dominate things. We are getting interesting things coming out. I recently watched Dashcam. You can watch a review of that on the Patreon. And that's not getting shown in View cinemas, so I had to catch a rental on that. And then I had an issue getting to the cinema the day I wanted to watch The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Ah, right. I've got that to watch this weekend.
Yeah, the Nicolas Cage film. I really wanted to get to watch that, and I had some issues getting there that week. And the next day, and the next week, the week after that, there's only 2 showings, and they're still showing The Batman, which came out a month before. There's still 20 showings a day.
Let me correct what I said then. The fact is, they are making movies that were the equal of the 90s. You just can't get to see them in the cinema.
Yeah, it's just a lot more difficult. And it was for when someone like Scorsese or something says oh, it's not a good thing that so much cinema is dominated by these Marvel movies. People get all up in arms and say, oh, let people enjoy things. But it's this is what he was talking about. He was talking. He's not saying that a lot of people think those movies suck, and I think a lot of them suck. There are good ones, but I don't have a problem with people enjoying them. What I do have a problem with is the fact that they're it's getting to the point where that because they're so guaranteed to pack out cinemas, they dominate the screens.
They're being enjoyed to the exclusion of other stuff, which isn't on, is it?
Yeah, is it if I want to watch a film these days, some of the things I've watched recently, one of my favourite films this year is a film called X.
Right, yeah, I'm aware of it.
Yeah,
my girlfriend's seen it. She's a bit of a horror aficionado.
Yeah, that's a fantastic film.
This is the one where they're making pornos in an old house. Is that the one?
Yeah, and it's it's kind of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre setup, and you think it's going to be like that because it's an old couple owns this guest house that they're using to make this schmutty movie in, and all this kind of thing, and then stuff goes sideways, but they stepped it up, they twisted it up. I was thinking it to be a lot more generic than it was.
That's good.
Yeah, that one's very much got the 70s grindhouse spirit to how they made it.
Nice. It's I've got to say that if we're just briefly dipping into modern movies, and we mentioned the Nicolas Cage film, The Unbearable Weight. Did you see the one he did last year that was a bit like the computer games Five Nights at Freddy's? He doesn't say a word in I can't remember it offhand, the name of it. He doesn't say a word.
Wonderland.
Yes. Oh, that's a fantastic film.
Yeah, Nicolas Cage has entered this. He's entered this era when he understands that he can just turn up and be mad Nicolas Cage,
absolutely
the Nicolas Cage that we previously only saw in things like The Vampire's Kiss.
I mean, I could never imagine sitting there watching him drink himself to death and leaving Las Vegas, that in 20 odd years' time I'd see him stomping a purple puppet gorilla to death on a toilet lid.
Yeah, but how great is it that he can do both?
Isn't it?
Wow.
Absolutely it is.
It's incredible stuff.
I won't ask you on the podcast about The Unbearable Weight, but I'm really looking forward to seeing that this weekend.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I'm looking forward to catching that and all. I'm going to bring Most Prob on. I think we're going to do our top 5 Nicolas Cage films when I bring Most Prob up.
That sounds like a good watch and listen. To be fair,
it's a good one because like you can like have two people bring in their top 5 Nicolas Cage films, and there'll be 10 films in.
You could have a full round table discussion and not go through the same film twice, couldn't you?
Yeah, it's wild.
That's excellent. But yeah, as a man who I was when the 90s began, I was 19 years old. When the 90s ended, I was 29. So that was. Talking about what we've been talking today, that's the decade where I probably sponged up the most culture in my entire life.
And it's the same era, and I think like it's given me like quite a lot of influence, because in the 90s I really was like hungry trying to find out information on all these films, like, and like I was like looking up about the video nasties and that, like, and you know, I was looking into the soundtracks. I was looking at like what people's influences are, and like at the time, this is like before the internet. We're doing this.
Of course, it was. Yeah.
Which makes it a lot more difficult to do. There's like you'd have to find magazines, you'd have to find interviews, you'd have to find all these things, like, and you'd have to like pick one name out of an interview with Tarantino, and then you'd have to go off and like try and like connect the dots.
It's like me reading the back of album covers when I was a kid, and making those connections as time went on.
Yeah, it was an adventure, like.
But now, of course, you'll sit and watch a film with your other half or whoever, and you'll be like, "What were they in?" And you've got the answer in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Who do you watch an animation? Whose voice is that? You got the answer in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
It's taken away a lot of family debate, I'll tell you.
Yeah. I'm not willing to say that it isn't better now, because I absolutely love that some of these like films that I'd spend years tracing down, like really struggling to identify, and when I could find them, they weren't available. It was difficult. Like, everything's available to me at the touch of a button. Some of these video nasties that I would scour car boot sales in case someone had an old copy, or like dealing with tape traders that had a 4th generation unwatchable copy to do me a 5th generation unwatchable copy. Now there's certain ones of them that I own in like 4K, having bought it from the HMV by my house, you know. So it's definitely better, but I do have a certain fondness, like, and it is rose tinted glasses looking to the past.
Well, it was being a fan of something or researching something you wanted to be a fan of was just a different energy back then, wasn't it?
It really was, man. It was like crate digging for vinyl. It was different, and I don't want to be the old fuck that over romanticizes it, but things were different, and honestly, it's made me who I am today.
Things are different, not necessarily better. We can agree on that, can't we?
Yeah.
You know, it's the difference there. I mean, I love the fact that, you know, when we spoke briefly yesterday by text, you said we're going to do the 90s. The first thing that came to mind was Original Gangsters.
Yeah.
Is that all right, by the way?
Oh shit! Hang on.
You run out of tape.
Yeah, at some point, the camera popped off. So, because we're at the end of the episode, and I know we already filmed the stuff with Jackie Brown and Frankenhooker, it's probably only audio at this point in the video, because, but I've whacked it back on anyway.
Yeah, no, fair enough. No, all as I was saying was, you know, it was a different energy to have a hobby back then. I love the fact that when we spoke by text yesterday and you said the 90s, within 10 minutes, I had a 1080p copy of Original Gangsters up on my screen. Yeah. You know, if we'd have been doing something like this 20 years ago, we'd have had to plan it 3 months in advance just so I could go to a few car boot sales.
This is it, man. I'd flip it, like I'd have to be like making long distance phone calls. I'd have to be making long distance phone calls to ask someone I know I spoke to at a party that might have mentioned that he had a video copy or something. It's insane.
It is crazy, isn't it? But
so yeah, things have changed for the better. But I do think I learnt a lot from growing up in that environment.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. Man. You're a walking encyclopedia, aren't you?
That's it. Of some very daft shit, but
well, whether it's daft or not, it's still, you know, it's still shit, and it's your shit.
Yeah, man.
And that's why we love KSC, because it's your shit, and we all get to share in it.
Safe. And if you love the KSC and you want a little bit of extra KSC in your life, you can hit up our Patreon. And now I've got fibre broadband. I'm dropping videos all the time. There's a lot of bonus content going there. I've set up the tiers so that like it's supposed to be tiered, but at the minute I'm just giving everything to anyone who's signed up at all. So
that's a good deal then.
Yeah, so I'm working on super Uber content for people who are on higher tiers. But right now, if you sign up to KSC, even at the lowest tier, you'll get fucking everything, and you'll get the studio episodes, even when the cameras go dead. You'll get the full high quality studio episode 48 to 72 hours in advance with no adverts. So that's a banger. So if you've listened to this far, you might want to consider that. But anyway, thanks again for coming over.
No, thanks for asking me, man. It's been another pleasure.
Okay, we're going to have to think of another subject for last time because I think we've done the decades now. But
I've had an idea. I'll tell you after. I'm not giving it away even to the Patreon people.
Okay. In that case, we'll catch you soon. This has been the KSC. Safe.
Tra.